Hey guys, Stealth here. Today we're doing a unit review on the Marder 2. This is another unit that got introduced with the DLC that was launched yesterday. The Marder 2 seems to be a different version of the Marder 1, tremendously upgraded, and you can get it for only 30 points. They only come with Panzer Grenadiers, it seems, so they have low availability, which means they're a little bit balanced that way. And this match I'm going to use them in both single, so one unit at a time, in groups of 2 or 3, and I want to see what kind of units they can take on. Now, as opposition, I've created a easy deck, that is an easy AI, which has the availability of several different units. As you can see, they have some Afghanskis. I wanted to see how they would do against these. BMP-2Cs, some command vehicles, concours, Chonma-Ho tanks, heavy tanks, some more infantry, and later they're going to bring in helicopters as well. Now let's have a quick look at the stats of these Marder 2s. These guys have 10 frontal armor. Now keep in mind, this is more than those Chonma-Ho tanks you saw on the other side. They have a very high accuracy, both standing still and on the move. They have an AP power of 6, high rate of fire, and they come with 900 rounds. I have 7 of these in my West German deck at veteran. You can take, I think, 10, maybe 12 of them at a little lower veterancy, but I haven't tested those yet. What I can tell you though is that these veteran units are very good at what they do. I've split my units into one group of 3 and one group of 1. Now this way I can test how well these mortars will perform. I have a Tiger helicopter here just to do some scouting. And you could argue that these things don't even need a scout because they have medium optics of their own. Still, I got the Tiger in here, so together they're going to do some scouting. The Tiger's weapons are all disabled, so he cannot fire, so I can have some good results with the Marder 2. See how well he does against any kind of vehicle. You can also see that they have a decent off-road speed, 65, which is pretty good for an IFV. Time to acquire first targets. Now, they have a good range, as you can see, 2100 meters, which even outranges some of the cheap tanks, which have a range of 1925. So this thing can engage heavy or medium vehicles at an extreme range. He already fired a couple shots. Let's see, he fired 5 shots. 15, sorry. 15 50mm shots, and the Afghanskis are already taking a lot of fire. Just watch how fast these things go down. Of course, an Afghansky only has 2 frontal armor, so that's not really anything special. But look at the accuracy of this gun, 97%. BMPs are going down quickly. These don't have a lot of armor, 2 frontal armor, but they barely get the chance to shoot at my Marder. So by now this lonely Marder has taken out 190 points worth of units. The unit itself costs 30 points, so I'm at this point already considering this thing borderline overpowered. Now let's see against infantry. They do seem a bit lacking against infantry, so that might be their, well, not exactly their forte. For that I would still take the Marder 1, which have faster firing autocannons. As you can see, they are definitely suppressing them, but they're not dying very quickly. So the place in the deck for the Marder 2 seems to be against vehicles or light tanks. That is, the cheap tanks such as, where are they again? Here, Chonma-Hos. These have less frontal armor than my Marder 2. I think that's a bit weird for a tank. I'm intentionally holding this Marder 2 at range here, just to see how fast they function against infantry, which is not that fast. Certainly they're all panicked, but they're not dead yet. Now right here I'm intentionally holding my Marder here. I've disabled the guns, and it got hit by an RPG once, which took out 4 blocks of health. These motor shoots and fire RPG 7s, HP power of 14. Not that good, but you can see that it doesn't really affect the Marder that much, although you shouldn't keep them exposed to fire. 3 of them miss, because most of them are panicked. I move it back a little bit, waiting for another RPG to hit. Okay, that was too far. Move it front again. RPG fires and takes it out. And that was probably even 2 RPGs, because you can see 2 of these lines here. So I'm going with 2 to 3 RPGs per Marder 2. Next I'm going to use this group of Marder 2s. And we have our first aerial victim here, an Mi-17 helicopter. Now of course these things aren't very armored. They're 30 points, 1 frontal armor, 2275 meter range on the rocket, so they should outrange the Marder 2s. These things have poor optics and they don't have any recon in the region, so it's going to be difficult for them to spot my mortars in time. While my mortars definitely have eyes on them because of this tiger. Now here we go. They're firing at this infantry group. Still, this is the combined rate of fire of 3 Marders, and this infantry is just not going down quick enough. Going for the helicopter next. It manages to fire a couple shots. Didn't really hit any of my mortars. Now we have an oncoming wave of 6 BMP-2s backed by 2 Afghanskis. Mortars are facing the front them. 1 BMP down. Right now I only have 1 firing because 2 of them cannot see them. Call them back a little bit. Unfortunately I lose my helicopter, so these things are now completely relying on their own optics. As you can see, these things aren't even shooting back. They don't have the visual to go after my mortars. Now, I gotta say, I'm glad they didn't give these mortars any anti-tank weaponry, such as an ATGM. That would have really made these things overpowered. And already they're performing way above their 30-point class. Waiting for some more units to come in. We got another helicopter. And right here we're being engaged by these concours. Now they get the chance to fire off 1 missile, but they decide to move and they get destroyed instantly. These mortars seemingly took a or some splash damage maybe from this Mi-17. Didn't do a lot of damage, but it did shake them or worry them a little bit. And we're gonna put a stop to that. He manages to get out, but not before he's heavily damaged. Okay, this is interesting. This T-72 1989 version, which is a 150 point tank, fired a 20 point AP shell, hit the Marder 2, and the Marder 2 lived to tell about it. He did lose 6 blocks of health, but he is still here. Afghanskis are starting to spray them, even in reverse. Even while panicked, they have a rate of fire which is very good, and they have a 60 to 40% accuracy. Meanwhile, I've brought in my remaining mortars. I had 4 initially, and these are the remaining 3, and I want to see what these things can do against tanks. These are just mopping up here. Forgot to turn off the weapons on this tiger. Now, you can see just how little this Afghansky did to these mortars. He fired at them at point blank range. HE power 1. High rate of fire. Damage? Barely. They have an aft armor, back armor of 4, side armor of 5, and I think this thing took shots from either the side or the back. But still, they only lost 1 block of health. Let's look at how this situation would go if this were a real battle. This T-72 would of course never be alone, but let's say that it was. This thing has a side armor of 10. The Marder has an AP power of 6, so it shouldn't be able to go through its side, but do some damage. This thing has a back armor of 4, or 5, sorry, top armor is 4, which means that if I can get the back of this tank, I should be able to destroy it. Pulling these things out again to try and get side shots on these tanks, or this tank. In the meanwhile, these 3 Marders have opened up on these tanks. They didn't fire that much. They fired 38 rounds. Now just see what they did. Of course this is a heavily bunched up group of tanks. Quite a bit of damage against these tanks. The side armor of 4 was easily penetrated by those Marders. These things are still calm, and these things are undamaged as well, but with only 38 rounds they almost took out one of these tanks. The T-72 misses. Going for some more of these tanks. Trying to push in with these Marders. They get stunned and one of them gets destroyed. I go after the Mi-17 with these 2 Marders. Now keep in mind, I have lost 3 Marders so far and a helicopter. Now the helicopter was by far the most expensive unit I lost, 120 points. So I really only lost 3 Marder 2s, which is 90 points. Look at the amount of damage they did. 830 points. 3 units worth 90 points together do 10 times their damage. Now if you're Red 4, you might be thinking, how do I counter these? Well, they don't seem to be very good against ATGMs. Although you need to keep at range from these guys, you don't want to get in close. And I might even consider calling in an ATGM plane, especially to deal with these things, because by the way they're performing now, 30 points is way too cheap. I'd suggest countering them with tanks, helicopters, artillery if you have it. Definitely infantry, especially in towns where they can get close enough to kill them. And yeah, ATGM planes. Look at this, in reverse, going, I don't know, maybe 30-40 kph, 50% accuracy, while panicked. You gotta give these Germans credit for their guns. Here, these Marder 2s now have excellent shots on the Chonma-Ho tanks, and they're taking them out one by one. 300 rounds fired. Take out some more Afghanskis. The one thing they haven't been able to damage so far is this heavy tank, the T-72 1989 version. Now I was hoping to get some side shots on this T-72, but unfortunately it turned out that wasn't going to be possible. I get these Panzer Grenadiers out of here so I don't get any polluted results on these mortars. They racked up another 300 points by now. Split them off into 2 separate ones to try and have one engage this T-72 from the front while the other comes in from the side or the aft. Now, one weak part of the Marder 2 is the top armor. So if you go after this thing with a cluster bomb plane or even HE bomber, I think that'll do a lot of damage to it. So that could be another way to take out this unit. This T-72 hit this Marder, probably right in the side, and now it took out 9 blocks of health. Now of course for the Marder 2 this isn't a normal situation because I'm using them now just for testing, but normally you would see these in combination with Leopard 2s, Leopard 2A5s even. Leopard 2A4s to support them, you'd see them in combination with anti-air. So it would be very difficult to get through these guys. But they are very, very proficient at what they do. Try and get some side shots on him. Fortunately the Marder can't see him. Let's see, he took 1 hit from these Panzer Grenadiers. Panzer Grenadiers fired again. Now my Marder's also starting to fire, but I doubt he's going to do a lot of damage. Let's slow this down a little. Yeah, he was firing non-stop at the side armor. Side armor of a T-72 is 10. These things have an AP power of 6, so they're not going to go through it. As you can see, it's doing absolutely nothing to this T-72. And eventually these Panzer Grenadiers take them out. So that concludes this unit review. What do you think of this Marder 2? I think it is extremely overpowered for its 30-point price. I'm definitely going to be using these, and I think you'll see a lot of these units on the battlefield because they're just so incredibly good. Strong points, go after vehicles and light tanks, helicopters. Weak points, don't let ETGMs hit these things, don't let cluster bombs hit them, and keep them away from infantry because they don't seem to be very good against those. So let me know what you think of the unit in the comments. Do you think it's overpowered? Have you tried it in a 10v10? What do you think of it? Let me know, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for watching.